My mother is the lifesaver of the Marchioness of Weiyuan. To repay my mother, Lady Qin arranged for me to be betrothed to Zhu Fengnian, the fourth son of the Marquis household. Zhu Fengnian has a rebellious personality and treats me with indifference. He even teamed up with others to play tricks on me. When Lady Qin ordered him to be beaten with the board, he still refused to yield, shouting at me furiously, who told her to insist on being my fiancé. She's just after wealth and status, it's disgusting. After being reborn, I had a profound awakening. All along, what I had admired was Zhu Fengnian's willful arrogance, backed by his powerful connections. So I begged Lady Qin to take me in as her adopted daughter, to find me a reliable husband. As a way of repaying her kindness, after changing my status, the treatment was clearly different, and it can be summed up in one word: awesome. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. In my previous life, I spent my whole life bowing and scraping in front of Zhu Fengnian, yet I never managed to win his favor. He truly looked down on me, a country girl. After we separated from the family, I found ways to make the shop profitable, but he called me vulgar. When I learned to read and write, he said that no matter how many books I read, I could never cover up my rustic air. His disgust was never concealed. He refused to share a bed with me, favored his concubines, and let his illegitimate eldest son take charge. But when he grew old, if I coughed just twice, he would glare at me. Before the wedding, Zhu Fengnian was too rebellious. Lady Qin said she had a few other sons from concubines and asked if I wanted to marry someone else instead. But what difference would it make to change to someone else? The sons from concubines would look down on me, an orphan girl, just the same. At that time, I resented Zhu Fengnian for joining his friends in making fun of me, and out of spite, I insisted on marrying him. I was holding on to a glimmer of hope, thinking that as long as I studied hard, Zhu Fengnian would eventually see me in a different light. I was too young and naive, not understanding that you only try to understand someone when you truly like them. Arranged marriages and matchmakers' words cannot force someone with preconceived notions to like me. I had long regretted it. But I also knew there was no medicine for regret. Moreover, I think Zhu Fengnian is quite pitiful. My wrong choice harmed both him and myself. Hearing Zhu Fengnian's unpleasant crying before my death made my guilt reach its peak. I have been reborn. I went back to the day when Zhu Fengnian teamed up with his friends to play a trick on me. That day happened to be the Mid-Autumn Festival. Song Kai came to me and started cursing at me with really harsh words. After he finished cursing, before I could even say anything, his eyes turned red. It's all your fault. If you hadn't insisted on marrying Fengnian, he wouldn't have been driven to jump into the lake. This scared me to death. I quickly asked for details and learned that Zhu Fengnian had jumped into the lake in despair after drinking. Without hesitation, I plunged into the lake to rescue him. I dove down again and again, stirring the water until it turned murky. But I couldn't even find a single piece of Zhu Fengnian's clothing. No matter how others tried to persuade me, I refused to go up. There was no other way. This was the son of Lady Qin. If the powerful wanted to repay a favor, they could make me marry her son. But if she sought revenge, even 9 lives wouldn't be enough to pay for it. It wasn't until Lady Qin heard the news and rushed over. She had someone pull me up, caught Song Kai who had deceived me, and demanded to know where Zhu Fengnian had gone. Song Kai caved, spilling everything like beans from a bamboo tube. Zhu Fengnian was watching the commotion nearby and didn't have time to escape before being caught by the Marquis's servants, who dragged him all the way to the Zhu family ancestral hall. A long bench was set up. He and his servant were pressed down side by side on the bench. Lady Qin was so angry that she grabbed his ear and demanded, "Do you know you're wrong?" Zhu Fengnian refused to back down and yelled at me, who told her to insist on being my fiancé. She's just after wealth and status. It's disgusting. Those words jolted me awake from the days I was in after being soaked in cold water. It was then that I realized I had returned to the year I was 17. Facing Zhu Fengnian's resentful glare, I stepped forward to persuade him as I had in my previous life. "Madam," before Zhu Fengnian could sneer, I pointed at his servant Wang Can. Wang Can was only following orders. He truly doesn't deserve such punishment. To guide her son onto the right path, Madam Qin had gone to great lengths. Naturally, He wouldn't let the servant who had been fawning over Ju Fengnian become his personal attendant. After careful consideration, he selected the sensible Wang Can. In his previous life, it wouldn't have mattered much if Ju Fengnian had taken a beating. The servant who delivered the beating wouldn't have dared to strike too hard. Wang Can didn't receive such favorable treatment. He had never been able to get a word in with Ju Fengnian. There had long been people wanting to take his place. After being beaten, those under him deliberately substituted inferior goods, giving him medicine that had lost its potency, which left Wang Can half paralyzed. As for Ju Fengnian, after all the twists and turns, I still think he deserved that beating. If he hadn't provoked my stubbornness, I would have called off the engagement long ago and wouldn't have ended up as his resentful partner for life. It was Lady Qin who arranged the marriage between us in the first place. Unable to defy his mother, he tried to force me into breaking off the engagement. How despicable. Lady Qin particularly valued my opinion. She immediately ordered Wang Can to be released, but she also knew that if Wang Can went unpunished, he might face retaliation from Ju Fengnian upon his return. So she arranged for him to take on other duties instead. I knew that if I continued to stand there watching, the executioner would find it difficult to show leniency. So as soon as the rod struck Ju Fengnian, I leaned against the maid, feigning a weak and unsteady stance. Lady Qin quickly arranged for someone to escort me back to my room and urgently asked, "Has the doctor arrived yet?" I changed my clothes and lay down on the bed. She sat on the edge of the bed, sighing repeatedly. "It's my fault. I thought all the unmarried ones left were sons of concubines, not suitable for you. I never expected the fourth son to be so stubborn." I lowered my gaze and held her hand. "Madam, why don't we just forget it? A couple getting along well is more important than anything. I don't understand grand principles, but I know how to cooperate with my mother when fishing if hearts aren't united. The boat will capsize." She rubbed my cold hands and hesitated. "Then have you ever thought about changing your fiancé? If we change again, I'd only be able to marry a son of a concubine. How could a debt of gratitude owed by the principal wife be repaid by a concubine's son?" As she said this, she clearly lacked confidence. Those concubines' sons who put all their efforts into scheming, why would they be willing to marry a lone girl like me who brings no advantages? Alas! Why must you dwell on gratitude? "Madam, my mother's help back then was merely a small gesture." I knew my face was pale at the moment, and my smile must have looked lonely and pitiful. "Rather than a daughter-in-law, I truly wish to be your daughter." Madam Qin's eyes suddenly lit up. Why didn't I think of that? The more she pondered, the more she agreed. All my life I've wanted a daughter, yet I only gave birth to sons. Not only had Madam Qin failed to have a daughter, even the concubines gave birth to sons. In my previous life, I noticed that Lady Qin had a particular fondness for girls, especially when the concubine of Ju Fengnian's elder brother gave birth to a daughter. At that time, Lady Qin had become the matriarch, and she personally named this little granddaughter Ju Mingzhu. Lady Qin couldn't hold back her smile and asked me seriously, "Jiang Yao, are you truly willing to be my daughter?" I looked at her with longing. Is this really possible? Of course it is. Her gaze toward me had become much more intimate than before. "It couldn't be better. When the Marquis returns, I'll have him make the decision to annul your engagement with the fourth young master and then adopt you as my foster daughter." At this point, my goal had finally been achieved. I must admit, the words Ju Fengnian had scolded me with were right. I wanted to marry him for the sake of wealth and status, but when I was young, I was unwilling to admit it. It wasn't until I grew older and reached the age of an old woman that I finally understood my true heart. All I ever wanted was a stable and prosperous life, living a life of luxury in the Marquis mansion. How could she bear to return to a life exposed to wind and rain? The fisherwoman never had a decent place to live. When she came of age, she would have to marry another fisherman with an unstable life, day after day casting the net, day after day handling the stinky fish, no matter the season. Spring, summer, autumn, or winter, no matter how hot it gets, we still fish with the net. No matter how cold it gets, we still break the ice to catch fish. Just thinking about such a hopeless life is terrifying. So even though Ju Fengnian looked down on me in my previous life, I never thought of leaving him. I do regret it, but I only regret not realizing this truth sooner. If I had known earlier that I was greedy for wealth and status, I could have thought of becoming Madame Qin's adopted daughter as a shortcut to success, instead of just marrying Ju Fengnian. Immediately, I shifted all my efforts to please Ju Fengnian onto Lady Qin, sweetly calling out, "Mother." "Yes," Lady Qin responded happily. She gently stroked my head and urgently asked Nanny Zhong, "Why isn't the cold-dispelling medicine ready yet?" I noticed that Nanny Zhong's gaze toward me had become much more affectionate. "I'll go hurry the kitchen." Lady Qin patted my face and sent someone to fetch the fox fur coat she had made earlier in the year. She also said the medicine was too bitter and sent someone to prepare some candied fruits. In my previous life, at this time, after Lady Qin finished beating her son, she was busy finding a doctor to treat his wounds. In other words, the treatment I was enjoying right now should have originally belonged to Ju Fengnian. If it weren't for Madame Qin being here, I would be rolling on the bed laughing. Ah, this feels so good. This is what it's like to be treated as a daughter. God knows how much I envy Ju Fengnian. Why is it that every time he messes up, he has such great parents to back him up? I didn't understand Mrs. Qin before. I thought Mrs. Qin's act of repaying kindness was just a fleeting thought. Thinking that with her status, she wouldn't want to leave any room for criticism, she would try every means to repay this favor as soon as possible. I was afraid that once the favor was settled, I would have to go back to living a hard life, clutching onto Ju Fengnian. Even though I knew it would bring hardship, I just couldn't bring myself to let go of this marriage contract. Later, Ju Fengnian treated me very poorly. Lady Qin had regretted more than once. "If I had known, I would have raised you as a daughter." Now, after taking the medicine, I was covered with a fox fur. Holding a piece of candied fruit in my mouth, I mumbled to persuade her, "Mother, I'm fine. Why don't you go check on fourth brother?" A mother always worries about her children. After taking care of me, her daughter, she neglected her son. Thinking about it makes her feel guilty. So I'll bring it up myself, to make her think I'm sensible and understanding. Ha 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 ha. Hold back the laughter. All right, I'll go check on Larosai. Madame Qin frowned at the thought of her son, then smiled again. But let's not tell him about the annulment just yet. Let him suffer a bit before we bring it up. I blinked my eyes and nodded repeatedly. He should be driven to despair. At that time, I had only been in the Marquis's residence for a year, and my body hadn't yet been pampered to such a delicate state. I was both cold-resistant and heat-resistant, and after just 3 days of rest, I was full of energy again. Lady Qin kept many dogs in her courtyard, a bunch of little creatures, utterly adorable. As soon as I recovered, I rushed to her courtyard. When I had free time, I would help her walk the dog, running all around the inner courtyard. In her spare moments, she would keep me by her side. She let me watch how she managed the Marquis household. Occasionally, she would ask a question or two, and when she saw that I answered appropriately, she would show a pleased and satisfied expression. I had already learned these in my previous life. She found it especially rewarding to teach me, as I picked things up right away. When Ju Fengnian's but no longer hurt and he was able to get up and move around, what I saw was Lady Qin looking increasingly satisfied with me. He was so furious that as soon as we stepped out, he dragged me aside forcefully. Then he warned me viciously, "Don't think that just because you've won over my mother, I'll like you." Holding the soft, fluffy puppy, I gently advised him, "Fourth brother, you're still young. Don't always resist our parents' arrangements. You simply don't understand a mother's good intentions. Preferences are fleeting in this world. Those stories of unwavering devotion only exist in operas. In real life, we must complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. Not every young lady could tolerate your temperament. Only I can put up with you." Madame Qin often said that I had my own redeeming qualities. I didn't understand it before, but time has made me see clearly. Ju Fengnian's character was exceptionally disagreeable. He never has a good word to say. It's one thing for men to be like that among themselves, but he doesn't understand the differences between men and women, nor how to be gentle and considerate. Every girl who ever liked him ended up being driven away by his attitude, and then he'd complain about them being too delicate. Even the favorite concubine he later took privately complained about his terrible temper. On the surface, he gave her favor, but in reality, she was also tolerating his flaws. Girls from other families were pampered and spoiled. How could they possibly endure his bad temper? therefore, my appearance perfectly met Lady Qin's criteria for choosing a wife for him. Lady Qin didn't expect him to achieve great success. She only hoped he would settle down and even thought he might become more sensible after starting a family. The fact proved that he had indeed matured, but it wasn't that his temper had subsided, rather, he had suddenly become driven, because I was very capable. Even his unruly friend Song Kai remarked while drinking with him, "I never would have guessed before, but Jiang Yao really knows how to manage a household. Your life together is far better than mine. I heard that during the recent flood, she took the initiative to donate a considerable amount of money. Even my mother said she's diligent but not greedy with money. Her generosity is truly admirable. He is also the youngest son of the main wife of the Marquis's household. Song Kai's life after the family division could not afford such extravagance. My life did not come to a halt just because I couldn't please Zhu Fengnian. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lived this long. Now, I have no intention of keeping pace with him. But as his future sister, I still hope he can strive to be better and not always be so childish. I know that when you like someone, you want to understand them, but I also understand that affection often doesn't last long." Zhu Fengnian sneered at my words. "How I behave is for my parents to teach me. Who do you think you are? And don't call me fourth brother. Who gave you permission to call me that?" "Fine then," I pouted, "but you're overthinking it. I'm trying to please Madam because I genuinely like her. She treats me with kindness and teaches me how to manage the household. Someone as wonderful as her, isn't she worth being good to?" Zhu Fengnian truly had no way to refute this. He frowned at me and said, "You'd better mean what you say." I shook off his hand. "If you have something to say, just say it. Don't pull and tug like this, people will laugh at us." He lowered his head, staring at the hand I had pushed away, and froze. Seeing him distracted, I turned and slipped away, saving myself from his anger and scolding later. Marquis Yuan will be back in 2 days. Lady Qin had already written to him to inform him of the matter. The date for breaking off the engagement and formally recognizing me as an adopted daughter had been set, and preparations were to begin as soon as he returned. However, on that day, before Marquis Yuan had even returned, news of Zhu Fengnian getting into a fight reached us first. At the time, Lady Qin had invited a seamstress to take my measurements, select fabrics for new clothes, and had even retrieved jewelry from the storeroom. She then asked Madame Zhong, who was the most skilled at styling hair, to arrange my hair. Upon receiving the news, I didn't even have time to take off my jewelry and quickly followed Lady Qin as we hurried outside. Lady Qin came from a family of military generals, so she immediately grabbed a horse and prepared to ride out. Fortunately, I had learned horseback riding from her recently, so without any pretense, I didn't wait for the groom to choose and personally led out a familiar-looking horse. After mounting her horse, Lady Qin urgently asked, "Where is he? What happened? How did he end up in a fight with someone?" The servant quickly replied, "The fourth young master got into a fight with the young lord of the southern garrison prince's residence and is now being held at the horse track, not allowed to leave. Fortunately, the cousin from the general's residence is also there, so he hasn't suffered any losses." By the time we arrived at the horse track, the two sides were just in the middle of an argument. Zhu Fengnian was tugging at the collar of a young man in red robes, saying, "If you have something to say, say it to me. Watch your language, why drag her into this?" That young man, with features as exquisite as a painting, was none other than the young lord of the southern garrison prince's residence, He Lian. He didn't mind having his collar grabbed, glancing sideways with a frivolous tone. "What did I say about her? Which part was wrong? Aren't those fisherwomen all like that? Who knows how many men have been on their boats, why can't it be said?" These words made Zhu Fengnian clench his fist, ready to strike. I sneered coldly, "It can be said, but why not say it to my face?" The crowd of onlookers all turned their heads to look at me. I unceremoniously pushed through them. Striding right into the middle of the crowd, I roughly shoved Zhu Fengnian aside, took his place, and grabbed the young man by the collar. "What did I ever do to you? If you have something to say it to my face instead of behind my back." The young man met my fierce gaze and stammered, "Who the hell are you?" As soon as the words left his mouth, his face flushed red inch by inch. I am well aware of the banter and teasing among men. Such undignified talk is just the norm in the lives of common folk. There are far more explicit rumors than this. Using such words on me is a big mistake. If you don't even know who I am, then why are you here gossiping about me and making jokes at the expense of my innocence? Does that make you look more noble? If you don't explain yourself clearly today, I'll hang myself at your doorstep, Ju Fengnian interjected from the side. Why would you hang yourself for no reason? If anyone should be hanged, it should be him. Shut up, I snapped at him. Then my eyes welled up with tears that began to fall pattering down. I released the boy's collar and pitifully ran over to Madame Qin, clinging to her arm as I started sobbing uncontrollably. Mother, look at this person. Falsely accusing me for no reason. I stay at home every day without bothering anyone. I want to beat the drum and appeal for justice, or else I might as well die. Lady Qin was furious. This is simply too much. Then she held me and comforted me for quite a while. Taking advantage of Ju Fengnian's approach, I grabbed the flesh of his arm and pulled him away. Before leaving, he didn't forget to leave behind a remark. Fully aware that Helion was the pawn abandoned by the Prince of Zhennan's estate in Linen. He even said, "Don't you have a mother? How can you slander a girl like that?" If I remember correctly, the same thing happened in my previous life, but by the time I found out, it was already a story with the beginning and end cut off. I didn't know what the problem was, only that it could hinder Ju Fengnian's future. Now that I think about it, the Marquis of Weiyuan had gone out on business. Perhaps it has something to do with the Prince of Zhennan's residence, otherwise He Lian wouldn't have deliberately said such harsh words to provoke Ju Fengnian just before the Marquis of Weiyuan was about to return, making it seem as if he intentionally wanted to anger Ju Fengnian into hitting him. Just after returning home, Lady Qin turned around and slapped Ju Fengnian across the face. Ju Fengnian exclaimed in astonishment, "Mother," he pointed at me. This time I was clearly defending Jiang Yu's reputation. "Why are you still hitting me?" Lady Qin was exasperated by his failure to meet her expectations. "Don't call me mother, you're always stirring up trouble. If it weren't for Jiang Yu stopping you, wouldn't you have beaten him half to death? Have you ever considered why someone would provoke you for no reason?" Ju Fengnian lowered his head, still unwilling to yield. "Everything I do is wrong, but if it weren't for my engagement to Jiang Yu, I wouldn't have laid a hand on him no matter what he said. Why do you only blame me?" Mother, hearing this, Lady Qin was so furious she pointed at him, unable to speak. I saw her face turn pale with anger. Without a word, I rushed over and kicked Ju Fengnian, making him yelp in pain. Without a second thought, he tried to charge at me, but he was stopped by the young master from the general's manor. All he could do was point at me and curse. "Jiang Yu, have you lost your mind? Don't think I won't hit a woman." I wasn't about to let him off easy. "You're the one who bullies me the most on a regular basis, and now you claim it's for my sake. It's clear that you have a terrible temper and are easily provoked. Today, I'm the one being slandered, yet I haven't laid a hand on anyone. If you're brainless, just admit it. Don't blame your mother for favoring you alone, and don't try to shift the blame to make her dislike me." I was so angry that I took advantage of him being stopped by someone and rushed over to stomp on his foot again. After stomping on him, I quickly hid behind Lady Qin. "Mother, look at fourth brother, he's always bullying me." Ju Fengnian struggled a bit. "Qin Yu, let go of me." Jiang Yao, you're asking for it." His face twisted into a terrifyingly fierce expression. "I'm also a bit afraid he might break free and hit me." I quickly urged Mrs. Qin, "Mom, let's go, ignore him. When Dad comes back, we'll have him give him a beating, and then he'll behave." Ju Fengnian was so angry he stomped his feet. "They're my dad and mom, what are you calling them that for?" But it was too late, his mom had already been coaxed away by Matilda. I turned back and gave him a triumphant smile. At my age, I can't handle anger well. Fortunately, with the interruption, Mrs. Qin managed to calm down. She knew I was worried she might be overwhelmed with anger. Holding me, she sighed with emotion. "It's true that a daughter has a softer heart. If you hadn't reacted quickly today, and Ju Fengnian had seriously injured someone in his rage, we would have turned from being in the right to being in the wrong." Absolutely. Compared to Ju Fengnian, anyone would seem gentle and likable. I took the tea offered by the maid and handed it to her. "We're all family, so we should stand up for each other when needed. Even my fourth brother knows to defend me when we're out." Seeing that I wasn't angry with Ju Fengnian, Lady Qin breathed a sigh of relief and finally took a sip of her tea. Nanny Zhong came in and said, "The young master is here." I was just about to stand up when a teacup was handed to me. Lady Qin said, "We are all family here, no need to avoid him." Perhaps what was about to be said was something only family members should hear. Does this mean they consider me as one of their own? I was so overjoyed holding the teacup that I forgot to put it down. When Qin Yu came in and saw me, he said thoughtfully, "Aunt, I received news from my father that Lian has gone to the palace to file a complaint." Lady Qin frowned and said, "His Majesty is well aware of matters outside the palace. That young man going to the palace to complain might just end up getting punished. Perhaps he has other intentions for entering the palace. This reminds me of the fate of the Southern Prince Manor in my previous life. Back then, the heir of the Southern Prince Manor was deposed. The one who replaced him wasn't any of Lian's 3 brothers. Instead, it was him, the discarded son who had been sent to Linen at the age of 7. Qin Yu cupped his hands in admiration. "Aunt, your foresight is truly remarkable. My father has received news that Helian's mother has passed away." Hearing this, my eyes suddenly widened. Helian went to the palace to lodge a complaint with His Majesty, which means he is about to evade all of the Southern Prince's surveillance. This meeting must have led to some kind of agreement between Helian and His Majesty. No wonder, in my previous life, not long after Helian returned, the Southern Prince fell ill and died, but at that time, Lian was severely beaten by Zhu Fengnian. This caused some of the arrangements above to get stuck. No wonder Zhu Fengnian's career was hindered, and he faced setbacks everywhere in the first few years of his work. I was lost in thought. I didn't even notice when the conversation in the room had stopped. When I looked up, I met Qin Yu's probing gaze. I even gave him a silly, clueless smile. "Mrs. Qin cleared her throat lightly. "Come, I haven't introduced you yet. Jiangyu, your cousin." Qin Yu, as composed as he was, couldn't help but feel surprised. "How come it's my cousin? Isn't she Fengnian's fiancée?" Mrs. Qin had long prepared her explanation for outsiders. "Fengnian doesn't want to marry. And Jiangyu doesn't want to marry either. Once your uncle returns, I'll formally adopt her as my foster daughter. So, she is indeed your cousin now." I tactfully stood up and greeted him with a curtsy. "Hello, cousin." Qin Yu was a beat slow in returning the greeting, then patted his pockets but found nothing. He could only give an awkward laugh. "When we hold the adoption ceremony, I'll make it up to you with a proper gift." Lady Qin teased, "You're quite clever." Giving both the meeting gift and the name-changing fee at once, Qin Yu thought for a moment, then drew the dagger he carried with him. "Cousin, take this to enjoy, but be careful, it's sharp, so don't hurt yourself." It was a personal item, so I didn't dare accept it directly. Lady Qin glanced at it and nodded to me. "This is one of his most cherished possessions. It's time to make him feel a little heartache." Qin Yu immediately made a face of discomfort, which sent both Lady Qin and me into fits of laughter. After chatting for a while, I withdrew together with Qin Yu. Just as I was about to politely take my leave, he suddenly called out to me, "Cousin, you left your earring at the riding grounds." I happened to pick it up. The dazzlingly red gold-inlaid ruby earring was taken from the side pocket of his chest. Resting in the palm of his hand, I quickly touched my ear. No wonder something felt off. One side felt light and the other heavy. Good thing no one else picked it up. Just as I was about to retrieve it, a child's shout suddenly came from outside. The gatekeeper's granddaughter, Xiaoling, rushed in. "The Marquis has returned." It was because Zhu Fengnian had gotten into a fight with someone. I completely forgot that Marquis Weiyuan was returning today. I immediately put the matter of the earrings behind me and rushed back excitedly. "Mother, father is back." With Marquis Weiyuan's return, the heir also came back from the camp, and the other sons gradually appeared. Only Zhu Fengnian ran off in anger, and no one knows where he went, so much so that by the time of the evening meal, Lord Weiyuan told his family that he intended to adopt me as his foster daughter, with only Zhu Fengnian still kept in the dark. The next day, I heard he came back dead drunk. At that time, I was in the ancestral hall, kneeling in worship before the ancestors of the Zhu family. The elderly clan chief served as the witness. My name was changed from Jiang Yaro to Zhu Yaro. An adopted daughter is different from a nominal daughter. Not only will the surname be changed, but the name will also be recorded in the clan registry. In the future, when my parents grow old, I may even inherit a share of the Wei Yuan Marquis estate's property. I became a legitimate member of the Zhu family. Prosperity and wealth are secured. A wonderful life lies ahead. Invitations have been sent out one after another. The banquet is scheduled for the day after tomorrow, mainly to announce a change in identity publicly, and also to let me get acquainted with the relatives. But none of this requires me to worry about it. In her spare time, Lady Qin had someone hang a swing on the big tree in the yard. I'm bold, swinging high on the swing. Occasionally, I'm taken by Lady Qin to try on makeup, many of which are styles she experimented with in her youth. Every time I dress up beautifully, she becomes very happy. I'm deeply interested in everything I never got to experience in my past life. Each time I put on a new outfit, I'd twirl around in front of Lady Qin, preening with pride. It gave me a sense of being the apple of her eye. Lady Qin clicked her tongue in admiration. So beautiful. I wonder which young man will be lucky enough to win your heart someday. I lifted the hem of my skirt and moved closer to her. If you can't bear to part with me, Mother, I wouldn't mind staying by your side forever. Rather than pleasing that useless Zhu Fengyan, pleasing Lady Qin can give me everything, whether it's the respect of the servants or beautiful jewelry. All of it makes me forget my worries with joy. A woman's affection is truly wonderful. Delicious snacks and tea always warm the heart. Lady Qin shook her head with a smile. That won't do. I'm not some old immortal. How could I protect you forever? While I'm still in good health, I'll find you a reliable family and help you establish yourself. Only then can I rest easy. I know you're thinking of me, Mother, I said, clinging to her arm affectionately. I'll do whatever you say, Lady Qin complained. Why are you always so obedient? A young lady should have a bit of a temper. Otherwise you'll easily be taken advantage of. I nuzzled against her and said, I'm so clever, I only listen to you. It's effortless to please someone who already likes me. Lady Qin had such a kind heart. Otherwise, she wouldn't have regretted, in her old age, letting me marry Zhu Fengyan, always believing that she had ruined my life. Actually, that's not the case. No matter how bad Zhu Fengyan's temper was, he never hit a woman. He may not have been a good husband, but he was certainly not a wicked man. Marrying him was also an opportunity. Many women of my status dream of living such a seemingly chaotic yet prosperous and stable life. I was able to run the shop so successfully because Madame Qin sent a manager to guide me in the ways of making money. There is no such thing as the ability to create something out of nothing. My efforts to please her are not blind admiration. Every choice I make now is informed by years of experience from my past life with her. Back and forth it went. The makeup and attire for the day after tomorrow were finalized. I went into the inner room to change out of my formal dress. Zhu Fengyan barged in at that moment. Mother, Jiangyu is my fiancée, how can she become my sister? So, he had sobered up and found out. Madame Qin replied unhurriedly, why can't she? You don't want her as your wife, but I want her as my daughter. Zhu Fengyan remained silent for a long while before stubbornly insisting, I disagree, with a loud slap. The table shook as if struck by thunder. Lady Qin laughed in disbelief. You disagree? Back then, you slandered her with so many harsh words. She is the daughter of my savior, and for no reason, you've looked down on her all this time. Since you're unwilling to take care of my savior's daughter on my behalf, then I'll do it myself. Now you say you disagree. From what position do you dare say you disagree? I just don't agree. You were the one who made her my fiancée. And now without my permission, you're making her my sister. Have you ever considered how I feel? Then what do you want? To keep her as your fiancée, or to drive her out of the house? These words instantly set my already anxious heart ablaze with agitation. That bastard Zhu Fengyan is my nemesis. He said in a bewildered tone, I don't know what to do, but having her as my sister is really a bit strange. These words made Madame Qin fall silent. She sighed and said, go back and think it over carefully. Don't always act on impulse. You're not a child anymore. You should understand the meaning of a word once spoken cannot be taken back, and once a move is made, it cannot be retracted. Having failed to achieve his goal, Zhu Fengyan felt somewhat unwilling to give up. This provoked Lady Qin's irritation, and she scolded him angrily. He then left in a huff. I lifted the curtain and leaned out. Mother, you can't drive me away. Lady Qin, full of anger, smiled when she saw me. But then, amidst the laughter, a touch of sorrow crept in. What a sin, he actually seems to like you a little. I was quite surprised too. Ju Fengnian rushed over in a daze to stop it. Clearly, he was very concerned about his fiancée becoming his sister. If he hadn't hesitated so much and directly told me to leave, I could have said he disliked me, but the disappointment in his tone was too obvious. However, I have some experience with this. As long as it's not explicitly stated, he won't figure it out anytime soon. After a while, he'll just forget about it. Lady Qin sighed. I was going to ask if you'd be willing to give him a chance, but since you've analyzed it so clearly, it's obvious you don't have romantic feelings for him. I know the invitations were sent out, and it could be said that they were written incorrectly. Please don't. My desire to be your daughter is truer than real gold. Being a daughter-in-law is not as easy as being a daughter. Who would have thought that I would run into Ju Fengnian after I left the house? He pulled me into the corner. Do you hate me that much? My back hit the wall, and I gasped in pain. Hate what? He sneered coldly. Do you really think you can fool me like a child? I didn't figure it out at first, but I knew the post had already been sent out. There was no time to think too much about it, so I wanted to go back and argue with Mother, and just then, I overheard you and her talking about me. Damn it, how did he manage to overhear something that should have been kept from him? I am truly left speechless. I raised my eyes to confront him. Is there anything you've done that isn't detestable? Ju Fengnian's anger abruptly ceased. His eyes fixed tightly on me. His mouth opened but no words came out. His voice was suppressed. You can stay in the mansion, but why must you become my parents' adopted daughter? He's truly been spoiled into such naive innocence. I felt a bit discouraged. To live in the Marquis's residence long term, I need a respectable status, but it's best not to be your fiancé. So being a daughter is most suitable. He gritted his teeth in anger. So you really are after wealth and status? I rolled my eyes at him, although I do love wealth. My feelings for Mother are sincere and can be witnessed by heaven and earth. I struggled a bit, only to be pressed down even tighter by him. This made me a little panicked. Let go of me. His eyes shifted with emotion. I won't let go, unless you go tell my mother that you don't want to acknowledge the engagement. I was about to explode with anger. You're trying to ruin me. Since you overheard what I said to my mother, you should know I don't want to marry you. A forced melon isn't sweet. Why are you so determined to hang yourself from my crooked tree? I just like crooked neck trees. He leaned in closer. I insist on tasting the melon that's been twisted off the vine, he said maliciously. What do you think would happen if people saw how intimate we are? Would the family recognition banquet still be able to proceed? His words were so close it felt like a whisper in my ear. I gave you a chance. You could have stayed in the Marquis's residence. But you absolutely cannot become my sister. I turned my head, my hand already reaching for the dagger I carried with me. A voice abruptly rang out. What the hell are you doing? Ju Fengnian, who was pressing down on me with his body weight, was effortlessly pulled away by the newcomer. With a loud thud, a solid punch landed. He sent Ju Fengnian flying, and there was no movement for a long time. Could he be dead? I stood frozen in place, my legs so weak I could barely lean against the wall. Qin Yu stepped over Ju Fengnian and came to me, gripping my wrist and pulling me close, half embracing me as he led me away from that corner. The Wei Yuan Marquis estate was quite large, and the further we walked, the more desolate the path became. This made me even more scared, and for a moment I wanted to stop and not go any further. He noticed my slow pace and simply helped me sit down to the side, then crouched in front of me and asked, "Can't walk anymore?" facing his concerned gaze. I felt inexplicably a little more at ease. Thinking of Ju Fengnian, I grew a bit worried again. He won't be beaten to the point of breaking, will he? Qin Yu grinned, showing his teeth. He gets beaten often. He's not that fragile. That smile was a bit too radiant. I only realized it belatedly. Are we standing a little too close? Lowering my head, I happened to see my hand still resting in his, and immediately pulled it back swiftly. That reaction was a bit too sudden. What would he think? Qin Yu also realized the awkwardness and quickly stood up, stepping back a pace. To ease the awkwardness, he asked me, should we tell my aunt about this? This made me worry. Would it even help if we did? No one could ever control Ju Fengnian, he suddenly said. Then the only solution is to marry her off sooner. This made me turn to look at him. He took out the earring again and handed it to me. What do you think of me, cousin? Seeing that I remained silent for a long time. Qin Yu snapped back to his senses. I was too abrupt. I'm going to die. If I dare to agree recklessly, I don't know what Mrs. Qin would think of me, after causing her son to do something foolish, and then provoke her nephew. Although I think Mrs. Qin is a reasonable person, I can't be sure at the moment. Will she be angry when she finds out what happened? No matter how much I want to run away, I still need to get back what's mine. I held out my hand to him. Give me back my things first. He put down the earring, wanting to leave but not daring to do so directly. I'll take you back first. From now on, make sure you have someone with you and don't meet with him in private. I value my reputation and explained. My maid took the clothes I need to wear to the family banquet back first. It wasn't me meeting Zhu Fengnian in private at all, he just popped out like a ghost. I stomped my numb feet and stood up. Luckily my cousin passed by. Otherwise the consequences would have been unthinkable. I almost used the dagger he gave me last time to stab Zhu Fengnian. Now the dagger feels even more scorching to the touch. How did he come to have such thoughts about me? Qin Yu looked at my hand hanging by my side. I was worried you might need these earrings, so I planned to ask my aunt to return them to you. This made no sense. It almost sounded like he was looking for an excuse to see me, especially after saying this. He uncomfortably glanced at me, then quickly averted his gaze. I looked at him with some suspicion. What girl would ever be short on jewelry? Cousin. Before he could finish, he suddenly choked on a cough, covering his mouth with his fist, his gaze at me tinged with surprise. I was truly puzzled. What does my cousin like about me? If I knew, I might try to change it. You are very beautiful. His words were disappointing from the start. Beauty is innate, and that really can't be changed. Before he could finish, words of praise kept coming. You're sharp-witted, quick to react, skilled at seizing opportunities, unafraid of gossip, and brave enough to resist. You're so dazzling that I suspect Lian was completely mesmerized by you that day. Sweet words that make one's face flush with warmth. Lian probably had never seen a girl so fierce. Right, I suddenly understood what it means to see a beloved as a beauty. For a moment, my emotions were tangled and hard to calm. This was the first time someone had looked at me with such a bright gaze. It was truly tantalizing. I tossed and turned all night. Everything I had ignored during the day became vividly clear in the night. My mind is filled with the image of his smile, strong arms, warm palms, direct gaze, ambiguous closeness and distance. Unknowingly, I fell asleep, waking up. I hugged the quilt and laughed for quite a while, then I immediately put it out of my mind. When you have many things, you don't crave temporary pleasures. The affection of others is more like a seasoning for emotions. Compared to this, I'm more worried that Zhu Fengnian might cause trouble at the family reunion banquet. Unexpectedly, there was no disturbance at the family reunion banquet. Until after everything was done, I saw Zhu Fengnian guarding the entrance of the courtyard. The setting sun of the evening fell upon his silent profile. The eyes that looked back at me were excessively steady. That familiar gaze pierced through me. I don't know how long it had been, but neither of us spoke. He said with regret in his tone, "What a pity. If only I had come back first. I don't know if he would have been good to me. I wonder if I, unaware of the truth, would have been led by him. But one thing I'm sure of is, seeing you is worse than seeing him." Zhu Fengnian, who knows nothing, is much easier to deal with. He chuckled softly. You really don't welcome me. Those eyes never looked away. He kept staring at me. Don't worry, I'll only stay for a while and leave soon. I couldn't put my mind at ease and remained vigilant. He took out a box and handed it to me. This is a gift from your fourth brother. Don't you want it? Unlike the young Zhu Fengnian, he wouldn't be so mean as to put trash in the box. I took it, and his embrace followed closely. Before I could react, he had already stepped back. Jiang Yao, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have treated you that way. After saying this, he smiled slightly. I saw the notebook you wrote. You said you used to like me. These words left me feeling deeply melancholic. I know affection cannot last, for I too once briefly entertained such thoughts. That sentiment, worn down by daily belittlement, scattered with the wind in his words. He sighed. I am too despicable. Unwilling to have married you who brings me no advantage, yet despising myself for loving you. It's laughable to say, having resisted for a lifetime, It never once occurred to me to abandon you. This kind of emotion is too tormenting. In this lifetime, I won't be an eyesore anymore. At that time, I didn't understand the meaning of his words. The next day, I ran into Ju Fengyan again. I was just about to speak. He tapped his cane and arrogantly warned me, "Don't call me fourth brother." From a distance, I could still hear him muttering in frustration. Damn it, why did I get hurt again? The servant Wang and stammered an explanation. You went on a drunken rampage. It was such a mess. You insisted on sleeping in the dog's kennel. Who on earth taught him to say that? Yet Ju Fengyan actually believed it, and that Ju Fengyan has actually disappeared. This Ju Fengyan doesn't seem to remember what happened that day either. Everything feels like a dream. That Ju Fengyan seems like a figment of my imagination. Only the bracelet he gave me is still sitting in the box. If I'm not mistaken, it should be a bracelet from Hanshan Temple. Yes, he refused to let me bear his child, but I had plenty of tricks up my sleeve. Unfortunately, fate had other plans, and the child was not meant to be. Back then, he specially went to Hanshan Temple to get a bracelet for me. I didn't know the origin of this bracelet at first. It wasn't until I went to Hanshan Temple to pray for that child that I learned he had been there too. Thinking of this, I turned back. I found the box on the table, picked it up, and rushed straight to the small kitchen, throwing it forcefully into the stove. Keeping this thing is like raising a ghost. As if Ju Fengyan is still here, bringing nothing but bad luck. It's better to forget. Ju Fengyan has forgotten everything. I don't have to rush into marriage anymore. Thinking of this, I laughed out loud with joy. 1 year, 2 years, passed by. Every day I lived with great ease. I made many friends outside, walking the dog, fishing, playing pitch-pot, drinking, horseback riding, strolling the streets. Day after day passed by in such an ordinary manner, until Lian went on a killing spree. He took over his father's position to reclaim the fiefdoms for his majesty. Word has it that he wants his majesty to bestow a marriage upon him. I don't know who said it, but they claimed that the person Lian wants to marry is me. So, Lady Qin took me to the estate to soak in the hot springs. When we arrived, I realized the Qin family was there too, stripped completely naked, with nowhere to escape. Qin's aunt caught me and asked, "What do you think of our Qin Yu?" I wanted to slip away, but then my cousin from this side smilingly blocked my way. I could only force a smile and say, "He's quite good." This cousin of mine keeps showing up in front of me every now and then. He was quite straightforward. I'm afraid you might get dazzled by all the choices out there and forget about me completely. I wonder how highly he thinks of me in his eyes. Truth be told, people out there don't really think that much of me. Moreover, the person Lian wants to marry isn't me. After much hesitation, I still agreed. Marrying someone else, I wouldn't have to worry about what might happen in the future. Hurting the feelings of my own family. Marrying him, there would be much more to consider, but he's always hanging around me, making me crave him for a long time. Due to having lived 2 lifetimes, I've always been too embarrassed to approach him, yet he always ends up delivering himself right to my doorstep. On our wedding day, I clung to him until I was completely satisfied. He was incredibly capable, and so creative. Youth is wonderful, only the young have such energy. Ju Fengyan's side story from a previous life. Jiang Yaro was younger than me. I never thought she would go before me. We each lived our own lives, with no connection to each other, but I never expected that once she was gone, so many places became unusually empty. She loved reading, but the books accumulated in the study are no longer being opened. The shops that thrived while she was alive have become ordinary with her death, no matter how carefully tended. The flowers she raised gradually lost their brilliance. My world has faded because of losing her. It was an accident to come across her daily records. It wasn't a thick stack, and the paper on top was the most recent entry of her daily life. I seemed to see her life in reverse. The more open-minded she was in her old age, the more stubborn and misguided she had been in her youth. She not only wanted wealth and honor, but also wanted me to love her. But such feelings were never mentioned again after the child was gone. As I gradually became aware of my feelings for her, she had already completely withdrawn. In fact, after she was reborn, I have always been by Ju Fengyan's side. I watched helplessly as she severed her marriage ties. From now on, anyone outside could marry her, except for me. She had not a shred of attachment left for me. I had thought I could stay by her side by means of the bracelet. I never expected she would throw it into the stove. I roared with unwillingness, but still dissipated uncontrollably. When consciousness was fading away, I heard her let out a light laugh. With a laughter of freedom, I suddenly stopped struggling, gazing at her quietly, trying to remember her. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the study. The desk was covered with the daily records she had written. Everything felt like an extravagant, illusory dream, and so the first story ends. What do you all think? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, please give this video a like. Now, here's the second story. Having lived in the Marquis residence for 3 years, the heir had never liked me. He found my seductive figure too improper for public display and never missed an opportunity to lecture me whenever we met. Knowing there was no hope of marrying into the Marquis household, I took advantage of his official assignment away from the capital to seek a marriage proposal through the head wife. Later, the heir returned to the capital to report on his duties. At a family banquet, he casually inquired about me. The lady of the house said with a cheerful smile, "That girl has gone back to her future husband's hometown in Yuhang to get married. They set off half a month ago, if they took the water route. They've probably arrived by now." It is said that on that day, the usually restrained and disciplined heir suddenly went mad. I had just stepped out of the lady's courtyard. A basin of cold water came straight at her face. Miss Kui Ying, the cousin, stood under the eaves, clapping her hands and laughing heartily. "Serves you right. You little vixen. How dare you seduce my cousin?" Her summer clothes were thin. In an instant, her garments were completely soaked. My eyes reddened with grievance. The heir, Ju Jin, had gained the favor of a noble and was about to be appointed as an official in Tongju. The first wife worried that during his half-year absence, he might be seduced by some temptress outside, so she drugged the food and, under the guise of Ju Jin's name, summoned me to go, but she forgot. For 3 years as a guest in the Marquis residence, the heir had never liked me, even when tormented by potent medicine. He would rather bite his lips until they bled than spare me a single glance, yet I ended up being branded with the reputation of a seductress. I didn't want to argue, so I endured the embarrassment and was about to leave, but Kui Ying wouldn't let it go. She suddenly reached out to grab my arm, which was covering my chest. "What are you hiding? Everyone in the back courtyard of the Marquis's residence knows you have feelings for our cousin. You drugged him to become the lady of the house, then ran out of his room in disarray. You've already thrown away your dignity. Why are you still afraid of people seeing your body?" I was horrified and quickly tried to avoid her. In the struggle, I accidentally pushed her to the ground. Kui Ying fell heavily to the ground, her face showing an expression of disbelief, which was soon replaced by a venomous glare. She cursed without restraint. "Shen Dunghe, you wretched shrew, how dare you lay hands on me? Tell me, can you swear to heaven that you haven't done every single thing I accused you of?" My face turned pale, but I couldn't refute her words. Ju Jin had achieved fame at a young age and was one of the most refined gentlemen in the capital, and I, merely relying on the childhood friendship between my late mother and the lady of the house, came to the Marquis's residence to escape the torment of my stepmother, a destitute unmarried woman. One is the bright moon in the sky. The other is the dust in the mud. Even having improper thoughts about Ju Jinsheng is enough to keep me restless day and night. No response was given. Kui Ying raised her chin and spoke maliciously. "I might as well tell you. Yesterday your stepmother sent a letter saying she has found a good match for you and is urging you to return to get married. I heard the other party is a widower who has already buried 3 wives and has no children. You would be the mistress of the household if you marry him, which seems quite suitable for you." I trembled all over, a chill running straight to the top of my head. Facing my expression of despair, Kui Ying deliberately drew out her tone. "For this matter, Aunt specifically called cousin over to discuss it." Guess what he said? What did he say? It felt like a lump of cotton was stuck in my throat, making it unbearably hard to breathe. She said with a smile, "Cousin mentioned that Dunghe is getting older and it's time to discuss marriage soon. If there is a suitable family, he is willing to act as a matchmaker to facilitate a wonderful union." The words fell. My heart ached dully, as if I had suddenly fallen to a cold, damp abyss. An overwhelming sense of humiliation surged up. I brushed the stray hair from my face. forcing back the stinging sensation in the corners of my eyes as I spoke. In that case, I thank the air. No sooner had the words left my mouth, Kui Ying's smile faltered, and she suddenly lowered her hands, softly calling out, "Cousin, cousin." My entire body stiffened. Then, Ju Jin's deep voice came from behind. "What does Denka want to thank me for?" I braced myself and turned around. It had been over a month since the incident with the drug. Ju Jin remained as elegant and distinguished as ever. His gentle gaze fell softly upon me, carrying a barely perceptible chill. He had once sent me books on etiquette and propriety, instructing me to study them diligently and not let my mind wander. The servant who delivered the message whispered, "The air is warning you, miss, not to entertain any improper thoughts." From then on, I avoided him at every turn, not daring to appear before him again. When I remained silent, "Cousin," Kui Ying called out sweetly, "Sister Dunghe has prepared a congratulatory gift for your promotion," quick as lightning. She pulled a sachet from my disheveled sleeve and thrust it into Ju Jin's hand. It was a common men's style sachet, with a quietly resting unfinished lotus flower embroidered on it. It's the stitching technique I usually use. In Daichin, when a woman gives a man a sachet, it signifies a confession of her feelings. Ju Jin's expression turned cold. "Nonsense." I snatched the sachet back, not wanting to explain further. "Young master, allow me to go back and change my clothes." He seemed to have just noticed my disheveled state and waved his hand impatiently, walking to the moon gate. Their conversation drifted over in low tones. Kui Ying asked coyly, "Cousin, do you really not like Shen Denghua?" Ju Jin sighed. "Shen Dunghe is a guest. Sooner or later, she will return home to marry. We only need to maintain the dignity expected of hosts. What others do has nothing to do with me." Their conversation gradually faded into the distance. A gust of wind blew by. Carrying a chill that spread to my limbs, I curled my lips in self-mockery. They all forgot, in Daichin, when a woman gives a man a sachet, it is not only a confession of her feelings, it also signifies her acceptance of the man's marriage proposal. On the day Ju Jin set off, the entire household came out to see him off. I was the only one who didn't go. The maid was puzzled. "Miss, aren't you going to see the young master off?" I was lowering my head, embroidering the red wedding veil. Mother once said, "Only a wedding dress embroidered by the bride herself will bring a truly blessed marriage." Upon hearing this, I didn't even lift my head, saying, "No need." Ju Jin probably didn't want to see me. Suddenly, hurried footsteps were heard outside the room, and the young servant who always followed Ju Jin rushed in, his face covered in sweat. "Miss Dunghe, the young master left a message for you." The remaining half of his sentence was abruptly cut short when he saw the wedding dress in my hand. A complicated expression flickered across his face, tinged with a hint of disdain as he said, "The young master said that Miss Dunghe's marriage is not urgent. It can wait until he returns to the capital in 6 months to report on his duties before discussing it." I nodded, understood. The young master also said, the servant added, that when the young lady has free time, she should read more to understand principles, and be careful not to lose her dignity in speech and action. Okay, seeing my calm expression, the servant hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you have nothing to say to the young master?" "No," I answered without hesitation. Hearing this, the servant showed a puzzled expression. He thought for a long while before asking again, "Then is there anything to pass on?" As he spoke, his hopeful gaze fell upon the sachet on the desk. "No." My voice was calm. Without a moment's hesitation, he left in disappointment. I set down the needlework in my hands and took out the letter from my grandmother in Yuhang from the dressing table. She had arranged a marriage for me. It was with Jiyu Yunjiao, the eldest son of the Jiyu family, a man with students all over the world. He and I could be considered childhood sweethearts. The letter also contained a handwritten note from Jiyu Yunjiao. He said, "If you marry, I will welcome you with the ceremony befitting a wife. If you do not wish to marry, I will spare no effort to protect you." At that time, I did not know, for the rest of his life, he would fulfill his promise with his life. But for now, my stepmother torments me, and my father only wants to use me to climb the social ladder, and there is no longer any hope of marrying into the Marquis household. I had no choice. This marriage was my only option. I had someone deliver the embroidered sachet to the Fulai Inn in the city. Then I changed into a plain, simple dress and went to the main wife's room. 2 hours later, I returned to the room and began packing my belongings. The maid looked astonished. "Are you planning to travel far, miss?" "Something like that," I smiled and said. "I'm going to get married." 6 months later, I boarded a merchant ship heading south with Jiu Yunjiao. The head wife came to see us off, holding my hand. She reluctantly gave me many instructions. Speaking of the end, she took out a circular jade pendant and pressed it into my hand, saying, "This jade pendant was given to me by your mother when I got married. Now that you've found a good match, I pass it on to you, wishing you a lifetime of harmony and happiness." I blankly took it, tracing the delicate patterns with my fingers, and lowered my head in silence. The madam continued, "You hang as close to Tongju. Although the heir is busy with official duties, you can always seek his help whenever you encounter difficulties." "I understand, Denka. I understand the prince is busy and must not be disturbed." The merchant ship sailed southward, and after more than 10 days, it arrived at Tongju. I became increasingly familiar with Jiu Yunjiao. Although he came from a family of scholars, he was charming and elegant, carrying the carefree demeanor of a playboy. The boat had just docked. He couldn't wait to invite me ashore for some sightseeing. "Little Lotus, there's a temple fair in Tongju today. It's incredibly lively. Would you like to accompany me to see it?" I glared at him with annoyance. "I've told you, my name is Dungha, Thandinjh. Don't call me Little Lotus, I don't like it." His smile reached the corners of his eyes. "This lively demeanor is the you I remember, not the lifeless look you had when we first met." Hearing this, I froze in place. Tears unexpectedly soaked my clothes. He panicked, fumbling to wipe my tears, but the more he wiped, the more tears fell. I couldn't help but slap his hand away. "You're hurting me." Jiu Yunjiao's ears turned bright red as he stammered in defense. "Then, I'll be gentler next time." I was just about to lose my temper. Suddenly, the sound of fireworks rising into the sky could be heard from outside the boat. Walking to the bow of the ship and looking up, I saw the banks brightly lit with lights, while clusters of blooming fireworks burst overhead. The next moment, a familiar figure appeared before my eyes. It was Ju Jin. He came straight toward where I was. It's been half a year since we last met. He had become much more composed and reserved, exuding a newfound confidence of someone in a position of authority. He stopped just 3 steps away, glanced past me, and greeted Jiu Yunjiao beside me. "Brother Jiu, your esteemed presence graces us. I apologize for not welcoming you properly." I don't know why, but I suddenly felt a sense of relief. I was wearing a veil hat. It's normal that he didn't recognize me, especially since the first madam probably wouldn't have told him about my marriage, because it's not important. Jiu Yunjiao exchanged a few pleasantries with him. He was about to make an excuse to take me away. Ju Jin's gaze inadvertently swept over Jiu Yunjiao's waist, and his expression changed. "Wait," he suddenly spoke sharply. "This sachet. I feel like I've seen it somewhere before." My hand hanging at my side suddenly tensed up. The one hanging at Jiu Yunjiao's waist was exactly the same one Ju Jin had seen. The finished lotus was so lifelike, it seemed as if a subtle fragrance was wafting in the moonlight. The next moment, warmth covered the back of my hand. I looked up in a daze and, through the thin veil of the curtain, saw the impatience on Jiu Yunjiao's face. He retorted coldly, "Brother Ju, you can eat carelessly, but you cannot speak carelessly. This sachet is a token of love given to me by my fiancé, yet you claim to have seen it before. I never knew that the top gentleman of Shangjing had such a frivolous manner." Ju Jin valued etiquette above all else. This accusation was extremely heavy for him. The servant, seeing his young master being so harshly criticized, immediately jumped out to refute. "This sachet does look familiar. If I'm not mistaken, it seems to belong to Miss Shun, who is staying at our Marquis residence." Silence. Before he could finish speaking, Ju Jin coldly cut him off. He cupped his hands towards Jiu Yunjiao and said, "My apologies. I was being presumptuous. You should apologize to my fiancé." Jiu Yunjiao gave my index finger a reassuring squeeze. All of this was noticed by Ju Jin, and for some reason, it felt rather grating to his eyes. He shook his head to clear his wandering thoughts and solemnly apologized. "Your embroidery skills are truly exceptional. It was my carelessness, and I hope you can forgive me. Over the past 3 years, I had mostly been the one receiving his reprimands. This was the first time I saw him being reprimanded by someone else. For a moment, my mind drifted into a daze. Jiu Yunjiao teased, "Brother Ju, if that Miss Shen finds out you mistook the sachet, I'm afraid she'll give you a hard time." Ju Jin helplessly cupped his hands in acknowledgement. "Brother Jiu, you jest." He paused, thought for a moment, and then added, "She and I have no connection whatsoever," until he disappeared into the crowd. Jiu Yunjiao held a candied hawthorn stick to my lips and shouted, "Snap out of it." Only then did I jolt awake as if from a deep dream. The sweet and sour taste of the candied hawthorn filled my mouth and nostrils, dispelling the bitterness. I looked at Jiu Yunjiao, my voice tinged with unease. "The Miss Shen that Ju Jin mentioned is me. I know." He smiled at me with a clear and open expression. I was taken aback for a moment, then smiled back. It was a dream tinged with the bittersweet pangs of a young girl's love. 3 years passed in that dream. Now I am finally completely awake. It has been half a month since arriving in Yuhang, yet the Jiu family has not come to discuss the marriage. Rumors are spreading everywhere. I remain completely unaffected. Spending my days in my room studying double-sided embroidery. Late at night, Jiu Yunjiao, who had been missing for several days, suddenly climbed over the wall with a limp. Leaning against the windowsill, he waved at me with a smile. "Little Lotus, come quickly, I'll take you to a wonderful place." It wasn't until we climbed onto the roof and the cold wind blew that I belatedly realized, "Is this what you call a good place?" Jiu Yunjiao blinked. "Take another look." Looking around, the lush grass stretched out, and the courtyard was filled with a desolate silence. A flash of white light crossed his mind. I exclaimed, "This is the first place I ever saw you." "Clever." He naturally raised his hand to ruffle my hair, then pulled it back as if shocked. I didn't notice, completely lost in my memories. Gujiar Academy is renowned throughout the land, and it even has a school for girls. My mother once sent me here to study. Back then, I was young and mischievous. I slipped away unnoticed by the teacher to go out and play, and by chance, I ran into Jiu Yunjiao, who was also skipping class. He was perched on top of the wall, and I was standing below it. Our eyes met, and I looked at him with admiration. "Big brother, you're so amazing." Flattered by my praise, he became so carried away that he tripped and fell flat on his face. Later, we became like-minded companions, catching birds, fishing, causing mischief, and spending our days outwitting our teacher. Until my mother fell ill and passed away. My father remarried and had another child, then brought me back to the Shen family overnight. The nightmare-like days lasted for 10 years. The once naive young girl had long had her edges worn away. A bitter expression appeared on my face. Looking back now, the one I feel most sorry for is Lady Meng. I wonder if she is still teaching at the academy. In the early years when the court opened maritime trade, Jiu Yunjiao said. Lady Meng had passed the marriageable age, so she simply boarded a ship and went to sea. To sea, I murmured to myself. Can women also go to sea? Why not? There are skies beyond skies, and people beyond people. What men can do, women can do as well. My heart trembled with emotion. In the past few years, everyone told me, this I must not do, that would be beneath my status. They forced me into becoming a dull woman who never stepped beyond the inner courtyard. Spending all day with my head bowed over embroidery, seeing the intense curiosity bursting from my eyes, he asked again, have you ever thought that marriage is not the only path for a woman, but marriage is the only path I can take? I responded numbly, unable to conceal the unease in my heart. He took out a folded paper and solemnly placed it in my palm, speaking with sincere earnestness. I once said, if you choose to marry, I will welcome you with the rights befitting a principal wife. If you do not wish to marry, I will spare no effort to protect you. Unfolding the paper, I found it was our marriage certificate. To marry or not to marry, it's all up to you. Your life is yours to decide. The crimson marriage certificate burned my heart like a raging fire. Slowly, I closed my palm. This time, I had a choice. On the day of setting sail, Jiu Yunjiao was unable to see me off. The servant who delivered the message said his leg injury had not yet healed, making it inconvenient for him to walk, but I heard that this injury was suffered for my sake. He unreasonably insisted on cancelling the engagement and was nearly beaten to death by the Jiu family patriarch. He lost the marriage certificate and is now being punished by kneeling in the ancestral hall. If he cannot come, then I will go to see him. The ancestral hall was solemn and serene. Jiyu Yunjiao was curled up on the prayer mat, fast asleep. I couldn't help but smile, tiptoed over, and placed the incense pouch I had embroidered overnight beside his face, whispering softly, "Thank you, big brother." His eyelashes fluttered slightly, yet he did not open his eyes. This departure, short as 2 years, long as a lifetime, no need for farewells. If fate allows, we shall meet again someday. Ju Jin had been somewhat absent-minded lately. He often dreamed of the scene where Jiyu Yunjiao and his fiancée stood hand in hand at the bow of the boat. The wind was strong on the river. Lifting a corner of the veil, the woman turned her head and gave him a radiant smile. It was none other than Shen Denghe's beautiful lotus-like face. Immediately, the scene shifted back to the day he was drugged with an aphrodisiac. Under the dim candlelight, Shen Denghe covered her collar, softly sobbing, her figure delicate and alluring, her face as radiant as peach blossoms. In the dream, he could no longer contain the overwhelming emotions in his heart, rushing forward to pull her into his embrace, showering her with boundless affection. In the heat of passion, he suddenly woke up drenched in sweat, casually wiping his hand only to find a mess beneath him. The servant, hearing the commotion, rushed in and naturally poured a cup of cold water to hand over. He then opened the window to let the smell dissipate. After doing all this, he finally spoke up. "The First Lady has arranged a banquet in the mansion for you and has invited many noble ladies from prominent families." Pausing for a moment, he added, "It seems the lady intends to use this banquet as an opportunity for you to meet potential wives." Ju Jin did not speak. If he were to take a proper wife, Shen Denghe would be a good choice. He was acutely aware that he wanted her. Once the thought took root, it could no longer be suppressed. At the evening banquet, he patiently listened as the first wife introduced several noble ladies. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, "Why isn't Denghe here?" 3 days ago, he had returned to the capital to report on his duties. The entire household came out to welcome him, yet Shen Denghe was still nowhere to be seen in the crowd. He didn't take it seriously. At today's family banquet, Shen Denghe was still absent from the dining table. He grew suspicious. The first wife was serving him dishes. Upon hearing this, her expression softened and she said with a smile, "That's right, I haven't told you yet. Denghe has already left." Ju Jin's heart skipped a beat. "Left for where?" the First Lady chided. "Where else could she go? A grown woman should marry, so naturally, she has gotten married. That girl has gone back to her future husband's hometown in Yuhang to get married. They set off half a month ago. If they took the water route, they've probably arrived by now." Clatter. The soup bowl in Ju Jin's hand fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. His voice was ethereal. "Marriage." Kui Ying, unaware of his troubled expression, interjected with a face full of disdain. "Cousin, you don't know this, but as soon as you left, she went straight to your mother, begging her to help arrange a marriage." As soon as she finished speaking, Ju Jin abruptly stood up. His eyes were bloodshot as he repeated the words he had just spoken. Shen Denghe got married. The madam had never seen her son in such a state of disarray. He immediately reached out to grab his sleeve, but Ju Jin harshly shook him off. He closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them again, his brows were shadowed with gloom. "Why didn't you send someone to inform me?" A flash of white light crossed his mind. He spoke with great difficulty, word by word. "Is the man she married surnamed Jiyu?" The matriarch showed a look of surprise. "No need for an answer anymore. This is the answer." Ju Jin staggered, rushing out without a care. He knocked over quite a few people along the way. He even stumbled and fell, ending up with a bruised and swollen face when mounting the horse. Yet he remained completely unaware of it. He galloped all the way out of the city and arrived at the dock. The dim moon hung high in the sky, and the river was tranquil. He jumped off his horse, woke the sleeping boatman, threw down a large bag of silver, and urgently shouted, "South, now." The boatman, frightened by his fierce demeanor, stammered and asked, To where? Of course, it's Yuhang." "No, return to Tongju, gather the officers and soldiers, charge into the Jiyu family, and snatch Shen Denghe back." "You can't snatch her back anymore," a voice inside said. "If she were not willing, she would have recognized me when we met by chance in Tongju. But she didn't. A cold gust of wind blew past, clearing Ju Jin's mind slightly. His gaze was pained, his throat working repeatedly as he stubbornly forced out the words, Shun Dungha, you can only be mine. After more than a month of sailing, the ship finally docked. On an island named Jeyo, I reunited with Lady Meng. It had been many years since we last met, yet her appearance remained largely unchanged. Her face was noticeably tanned by the sea breeze, and when she smiled, she revealed all 8 of her teeth. Gone was the sternness she once displayed in the lecture hall, where she taught us that women should follow decorum and refrain from showing their teeth when smiling. Her business empire was vast, and I accompanied her to many places. She taught me silk weaving, learning Japanese, and business negotiations. In summer, we drank coconut water. In winter, we feasted on plump abalone. The days passed leisurely, and I had long since left the past behind. In our free time, we would sit by the sea, chatting while drinking wine. After 3 rounds of drinks, Master Meng sighed. I thought
room. Ju Jin was there as well. Whenever he had time, he would join me for dinner. During the meal, he casually asked, "Have you seen Kui Ying?" I absent-mindedly hummed in agreement and countered, "When can I see Jiu Yunjiao?" With that, his entire demeanor instantly changed, and he slammed his chopsticks down heavily. He spoke displeasedly. "Is it because he appeared when I was neglecting you, so you easily shifted your affections?" I frowned and said, "My lord, people must move forward. A forced melon is not sweet." From Kui Ying, I learned that Ju Jin had been granted a noble title and was now the Marquis of Yongchang, a favorite of the emperor and at the peak of his influence. With your current status, marrying me would bring you no benefit. Shun Dungha, you are not me. How do you know I don't have a sweet tooth? Perhaps I prefer bitterness. His gaze was complicated. Aren't you going to ask when our wedding date is? A sense of powerlessness washed over me. I sighed and reluctantly asked, "When?" He got his way. Ju Jin's expression improved considerably. He walked over, took my hand, and pressed a kiss to it, murmuring with emotion, "The wedding is set for 7 days from now. Deng He, you and I will soon be husband and wife. Tonight, I wish to stay. Is this okay?" The disparity in physical strength between men and women was evident, as he leaned in to approach her once more. A servant's hushed voice came from outside the room. "Lord Marquis, the noble summons you." Ju Jin closed his eyes, suppressing the surging emotions in his chest, and got out of bed. "Deng He, we have a long future ahead of us. I narrowly escaped disaster. Fortunately, the wedding date was approaching, and Ju Jin was busy, so he didn't come often. The matter of sharing a room was never brought up again. Most of the time, I would stroll through the garden adorned in gold and silver, fully embodying the demeanor of the lady of the house, until one day, I wandered to the most secluded corner of the estate. There, I encountered a woman who bore a striking resemblance to me and was pregnant. A furrow of worry creased her brow, and upon seeing me, she instinctively put up a guarded expression. I gave her a faint smile, said nothing, and turned to leave. Less than an hour later, Ju Jin hurriedly arrived. His lips trembled, and he spoke hesitantly. "Dungha, it's not what you think. I can explain." "No need to explain." I smiled back at him. "It's common for a man to have multiple wives and concubines. There's no need for the Marquis to worry." Dungha understands. Upon hearing this, he let out a sigh of relief. "You think so, and I am at ease. Does the Marquis not plan to give her a proper status?" Ju Jin's expression relaxed, and he said with satisfaction, "There's no hurry. After you and I are married, it won't be too late to take her in, when she gives birth to the eldest son. We can raise him under your name. How does that sound?" "Good. I'll leave it all to the Marquis's arrangement. Dungha, to have you as my wife, I have no regrets in this life." But soon, he could no longer smile. The Marquis of Yongchang's marriage was graced by the Emperor's favor, with the Crown Prince himself in attendance. The hall was filled with distinguished guests, bustling with excitement. Before heading out, I took the jade hairpin from the dressing table and pinned it in my hair. This was a gift from Master Meng. Red silk hung high, radiating joy and festivity. The Master of Ceremonies announced, "First bow to heaven and earth." I threw off the bridal veil, holding the marriage certificate as I knelt before the Crown Prince, loudly proclaiming, "This humble woman wishes to accuse Yongchang Marquis Ju Jin of forcibly seizing another man's wife. I beg your highness to uphold justice." Everything happened too quickly. Ju Jin's face turned pale with shock. He wanted to intervene, but it was already too late. The surroundings fell silent, followed by waves of murmurs. His face turned purple with suppressed rage as he spoke. "Dungha, have you forgotten why you married me? I sneered. How could I dare forget? He didn't know. Later, Kui came to see me once more. She told me the information she had gathered. Ju Jin was secretly supporting the third prince and had amassed private troops outside the city. Moreover, Jiyu Yunjiao had never been captured at all. It was all a lie. Before leaving, Kui said, I don't want him to get what he wants, and I don't want to see you end up like me, marrying someone you don't love. As you grow older, you'll understand that youthful infatuation is nothing but an illusion. He is not worthy. I was taken by the crown prince to a secluded spot. He asked, how is the person who gave you the jade hairpin doing? I looked up in a daze. Meeting his complex gaze filled with longing, in the blink of an eye, I recall a rumor. When the crown prince was deposed, there was a woman who never left his side, but once he was restored to the throne, that woman disappeared without a trace. Unless, considering this possibility, I quickly bowed in respect. Everything is well with Master Meng. That is good to hear, the crown prince said with deep melancholy, since she has given this hairpin to you. It shows that you hold an important place in her heart. Rest assured, I will stand by you. You claim to be already betrothed. Do you have any proof? Yes. I hurriedly presented the marriage certificate. The crown prince opened it and glanced over it quickly. In the next moment, a look of surprise appeared on his face. He spoke unhurriedly. So you're the heartless woman who abandoned Jiyu Yunjiao and went off to sea. What? I was utterly shocked. The crown prince coughed awkwardly. I didn't say that. The next morning, at the crown prince's instigation, memorials impeaching Ju Jin flew to the emperor's desk like snowflakes. Within a day, the emperor issued an edict, ordering him to reflect behind closed doors, demoting him 3 ranks and docking his salary for 3 years. Jiyu Yunjiao received the message and rushed to the capital at top speed. Only then did I realize, after the crown prince was restored to his position and rewards were distributed based on merit. The Jiyu family's punishment had long been exempted, but at that time, my heart was entirely focused on Ju Jin, and I paid no attention to matters outside my own affairs, which allowed him to take advantage of the situation. Jiyu Yunjiao was angry that I had taken such a risk and refused to speak to me. The crown prince teased from the side, hurry and comfort him. If you don't, Yunjiao might just start crying. I pursed my lips, holding back the laughter that threatened to spill out. As a result, I provoked him into a fit of embarrassed anger. Shundungha, are you laughing? No, haha, you are laughing, really not. Phut, Shundungha, what do you want from me? Weren't you ignoring me? Weren't you going around calling me a heartless woman? Haha, who said that? Talking nonsense, such a gossipy mouth. The crown prince's tone was faintly resentful. It was me. Jiyu Yunjiao paused for a moment, then pretended to be busy and said, oh, those were just words spoken in anger. They don't count. Then was telling me to go back to Jo Island, also said in anger. Of course it was said in anger. And what about that line, if you marry, I will welcome you with the rights befitting a principal wife? Was that also said in anger? Nature. Jiyu Yunjiao suddenly turned around, stammering as he looked at her. Say that again. I won't say it again. I patted my sleeves and walked out. If someone goes back on their word, then I don't need to linger either. I'm preparing to set sail and return to Jo Island. Staying unmarried is just fine. With Master Meng as my companion, with gold and treasures scattered all over the ground, and with countless strong and handsome men, any one of these is more appealing than getting married. Behind her, the crown prince abruptly stood up. What did you say? Countless men. Jiyu Yunjiao's expression darkened. Try saying you won't marry one more time. Bad news. I was taken back to Yuhang by Jiyu Yunjiao to get married. Worse news yet. The crown prince is personally leading troops to sea to capture the fugitives. Outside the capital, farewells were bid at the roadside pavilion. Ju Jin watched the crown prince's procession fade into the distance until it vanished from sight. The obsession in his heart also turned to wind, scattering completely. The servant tried to console him. My lord, if you leave the mansion without permission and are discovered, it would be a capital offense punishable by death. If she leaves this time, I'm afraid we may never meet again in this lifetime. No one spoke. After a while, Ju Jin added, only now do I realize that her beauty is the least remarkable of her virtues. Shundungha is very brave. He's the one who doesn't deserve her. The servant was extremely anxious. Sir, let's go back. The young mistress is about to give birth. The young mistress. At first, Ju Jin couldn't quite recall who it was. By the time he rushed back to the mansion, the Marquis's residence had been completely ransacked, with no trace left of the young mistress. His mind reeled in shock, and suddenly remembering something, his face turned pale as he dashed toward the study. Getting closer, and seeing more clearly, the study door was wide open. and the floor was in complete disarray. Behind the grand chair, a large hole had been blasted open in the secret room. Inside, it was completely empty. Having been thoroughly ransacked, Ju Jin collapsed to the ground as if all strength had left him, muttering to himself, "It's over, it's all over." Hidden in the dark room was evidence of his conspiracy with the third prince to stage a rebellion. Each and every piece was enough to implicate 10 generations of his clan, never to rise again. 3 years later, at the Jiyu Family Academy, Jiyu Yunjiao sat upright at the lectern, his expression serious as he made marks in the book. A student leaned over to take a look. "Teacher, why have you drawn so many lotus flowers?" He froze, staring at the black ink on the asterisk "Great Learning asterisk," the corner of his mouth twitching as he began to spout nonsense with a straight face. "You don't understand. This is called cultivating the mind. With a good mindset, you'll succeed in whatever you do." Evening. Old Master Jiyu brought out the family discipline rod. Jiyu Yunjiao was beaten and chased all over the yard, howling and wailing, "Wife, save me." I lowered my head and asked my 2-year-old daughter with a smile, "Are you full?" My daughter nodded in her sweet, childish voice, when she was carried away by the wet nurse. I stepped forward to support Old Master Jiyu, taking the leather whip from his hand in the process. "Grandfather, rest for a while. I'll take over." Jiyu Yunjiao, Shundungha. "If you have the guts, come back to the room. I'll be waiting for you." He called for water all night long. I lay in bed for 3 days. The following spring, our second daughter was born. The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess have come to offer their congratulations. As if no one else was around, Lady Meng, now the Crown Princess, pulled me aside to whisper in private, "Sometimes I really miss the days on Jo Island." Me too. I wonder if my 8 strong men miss me. I miss them terribly. The Crown Princess spat out the melon seed shell from her mouth, her tone full of regret. A cold laugh came from behind. "All right, I will bring them to you right now." We turned around shakily. Jiyu Yunjiao, without a word, lifted me up and carried me away. "Your Highness, let's go first." The Crown Prince raised an eyebrow and pointed to the bed. "Crown Princess, please proceed."